And it's lights out. Welcome to the Pitwall Podcast, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. What a weekend for us in America. It is called Labor Day weekend. And it's great to have Dominick and my sister Sable and her husband over visiting. And our great friend Paula is traveling the world. And so we'll be able to have her presence again next week. And thank you, bro, for joining us this evening. And thank you, Dr. David Kessler, for joining us. And let's get right into it. We want to start off by showing you this amazing spreadsheet that I've been working on the ground up. A link will be in the description below. If you go to the tab called Performance, you get to see a lot of crazy stats. It's where all the raw data is inputted. If you go to the tab that says Rank, then you get to see all the information, but now alphabetized or prioritized based off of highest to lowest values. So under Score, you will see that Hamilton has the highest points for the season, 496, the highest average at 38 points, and over the last three races, or 3R average, he's at 39 points. He's 92% of the time in the top 5 scores for the week, and then TT is top team. That is, if you had $100 million or less for your team, how often would he show up in that lineup? And that is roughly 23% of the time. Why this is interesting is that because in the 3 race average, you can see, are they performing over the last couple races better or worse than their season average? So ones in red are performing way worse. Ones in green are performing way greater. And this is why Gasly, as you can see, he's green. He's kind of a sleeper over these last couple races. And he's averaging 27 points over the last 3 races, even though in the rest of the season, it's normally 17. Or Ocon, he is 10th average, but over the last 3 races, 25 points per race. And Ocon is eligible for a bonus 10 points this coming race with a 4-race streak. And that's why you can see over at the streaks column that he has got a highlighted 4 because he has got that streak going. Constructors to be aware of is Mercedes and Red Bull, usually getting 50 points or more a race, are down. And that is mainly because of the crazy races in Hungary and the wet race or non-race in Spa. But then you have some of these midfield teams like Alpine, AlphaTauri, and Williams scoring more points than normal. And also Ferrari as a constructor, this coming race, if both drivers finish in the top 10, they can get plus 10 bonus points. So bro and dad, how do you guys feel? Over the last 5 races, it seems like Formula One fantasy has been topsy-turvy and there's been less predictability.
I kind of like that there's less predictability, but it is hard to make it on the podium in the ORC Elite when there's so much change. People who you think are going to be steady aren't sometimes. It does make it more of a challenge.
Which brings us to our infographics tab. You will see our price point comparison, and this is why Hamilton and Verstappen are both closing back in. And with Verstappen only being 25.7 million and Hamilton being 33 million, why pick up Hamilton unless there's like some sort of power streak, which is where he gets his quality and his race streak at the same time, because you could be saving that millions somewhere else. Same thing goes for Red Bull and Mercedes. Unless Perez is able to turn things around, I think Mercedes is going to start pulling away with it. Because if you have Hamilton finishing second and Bottas finishing third, Mercedes is going to start getting big chunks of points again. Scrolling across, you can see information like race points per million for each team. You can see the top scorers, which would be Hamilton, Verstappen, Norris, Perez, Bottas, Leclerc, and Sainz, and you can see how that they're performing over the course of the season. Same thing with the top 4 constructors. There's a lot of randomness that's been going on, like Dad said. Keep going, you can see the race scores for the different teams. You can see the percentage pick tracker over the course of the season. You can see that for each team individually. You can see the trade in and out rankings. And then perhaps the one that'll be the most interesting for most of you will be a sentiment tracker to see what are the trends for the drivers going up and down in value. And of course, that impacts their price tracker. But what I want to show you here right now is our teammate battle. You'll see that for Alfa Romeo, Giovinazzi has been out qualifying and out racing Raikkonen over the course of the season. Mick Schumacher, of course, has been beating his teammate. Gasly's been beating his. Norris is beating Ricciardo. But Ricciardo, a quarter of the time, has been doing better. Ocon and Alonso are pretty even but Ocon has the edge. Vettel and Stroll are dead set 50-50. Hamilton's beating Bottas. Verstappen's beating Perez. Leclerc is similar like Norris, in which Sainz or Ricciardo can beat their teammate or out-qualify them roughly a quarter of the time, and Russell's usually beating Latifi. Bro, what are your thoughts about these teammate battles? Is there any driver that has surprised you over the course of the season in their ability to outperform their teammate?
Out of all of the teams that we've seen, especially in this last race, I feel like the Ocon-Alonso duo is not getting as much of the spotlight as they should. This last race, Alonso was able to get past Sainz, get those extra 2 points. Ocon was complaining over the radio, saying he felt like he was actually faster than Alonso. And I don't know if Alonso took that personally, but we got to see how he did the rest of the race. We don't really talk about them a whole lot, but especially in this last race, it was really cool to see them actually doing a little bit of something.
The problem, I think, with Alonso is he's just expensive enough that he's not normally worth picking up on most teams. But now that he's gotten his consistency over the last 7 races, now he's worth the option to pick up.
Something that comes to my attention is that Ferrari, Leclerc has out-qualified Sainz, but isn't that much further in points. You'd expect with it, the graph looking like that he would have quite a bit more points than Sainz.
To kind of segue into our championship standings, we'll see that Leclerc just barely has passed Sainz finally in the championship order. Leclerc has just edged out Sainz. He has 92 points. Sainz has 89.5 points. And like you're saying, Dad, Sainz has performed quite well jumping to a new team. And for him to be able to be on par with Leclerc over the course of the season has been quite impressive. Another major movement is Verstappen and Hamilton. They have switched places. Hamilton was leading by 3 points going into this race, and now Verstappen is leading by 3 points. And that is why it's very important, and we'll get into this later as well, why Hamilton wanted to get the fastest lap, is because Verstappen has 4 fastest laps over the course of the season. Hamilton only had 3. And so that's why he was wanting so desperately to get that fastest lap, so that they are keeping the gap between them as close as possible. Which now brings us to our constructor standings. Bro, during the race, I remember you kept saying, Ferrari, you need to finally pass up McLaren. Going into this race, Ferrari and McLaren were tied, and now Ferrari is leading by 11.5 points. How do you feel about that, bro?
The battle between Ferrari and McLaren has been close the entire year, but if Ferrari is trying to reclaim that 3rd spot, they're going to have to continue driving as good as they have recently. I was just hoping that the Ferraris would be able to just get the race done and have no drama. They were able to do that. No Sainz got passed up at the very last second by Alonso, but that's still better than a DNF or something crazy happening. That was a good drive on their part, and they were able to take advantage of a advantageous situation.
As we kick off our race reaction, I'd like to give a shout out to all of you who've joined us this last week over on Twitter, where I get to have a lot of fun with polls, man. I put polls almost every other day whenever I get a chance. And so I kicked it over and I said, hey, we've had 4 red flags in 3 practice sessions. How many more red flags do you think we're going to get over the course of the race weekend? And the majority said there would be 3. So we had 2 during the quali session, which is what Dominick was referring to earlier, where it really shook things up. Why do you guys think that we had nothing during the race? There was only like 1 set of yellow flags at the very beginning when guys were going off a little bit, and then there was one when Vettel spun. But why do you think there was no red flag, no safety car, no problems actually during the race?
I think one reason is because they slowed the pace down to a race pace rather than a fastest lap qualifying pace.
And so because you're not trying to push the car to the edge, you're not going to make as many mistakes. That's a good point.
So one of the things that the announcers was talking about is that Zandvoort is a track that demands your respect. It demands the respect of the drivers. If you make a mistake on that track, it's going to have catastrophic consequences. So I wouldn't be surprised if the drivers were being more careful. And we got to see a fairly clean drive from everybody. Yeah, we had those retirements, but that was not really due to any accidents.
Let's talk about Mercedes trying to catch Verstappen. Bro, how did you feel like that all played out during the race?
I remember at the beginning of the race, they all went off the blocks. Verstappen had a good takeoff, and he just really was disappearing. I was like, okay, well, then I guess that's just how the race is going to go. And then Hamilton has the slow pit stop, well, slower-ish pit stop. That's just going to help Verstappen that much more. And then Verstappen has his pit stop, which is almost a whole second faster. And yet Hamilton is the closest he was almost the entire race at that moment. Hamilton, just when he wants to drive brilliantly, he can do it. It wasn't enough, just far enough behind that it wasn't enough to actually catch up. But the point is, there are some times where Hamilton is just the scariest thing to watch.
I found it was interesting because Verstappen was smart. He said, let me get 2 seconds lap lead at the first of the race. But then Hamilton was always staying in that window. So Verstappen says, I want to be out of DRS range and I want to keep Hamilton kind of close just so that I can react. Because I hadn't thought about this. But if you're 2 seconds ahead of the guy, and he tries to do the undercut, you then push. If he's too far back, like maybe 4 seconds, he can pit and you're not pushing yet. So you're losing all those seconds until you hear, oh, he's in the pits. And so I thought that was an interesting strategy where he's actually trying to keep Hamilton close. I just thought it was Hamilton was always like on his heels, but actually Verstappen's trying to manage his tires. So he actually wants to keep Hamilton close enough, but not within DRS range. And so that was very wise of Verstappen to do that. So he was able to match Hamilton because at the end of the day, Hamilton would pit, he would cover him off, and then Hamilton could do nothing about it. And then when Bottas was blocking, Verstappen was able to pass him before Hamilton got into his DRS. If not, then Hamilton would have been able to actually mount a proper attack. And so Verstappen was really good with his traffic management, and Hamilton noticed that as well. He was like, he's getting lucky with the traffic.
Well, Hamilton did come within a second, but it wasn't in the DRS range. And by the time he passed Bottas, he was able to make that time back, pull ahead again, so he didn't have DRS by the time they got to that area.
We're talking about one person with a better set of tires going against some other. Perez, couple pit stops, he had some nice tires and he was able to make up wide a few places as a result. It was the same dance every single time. What's this corner? Oh, I'll take the outside. What's the corner? Oh, I'll take the outside. What's this? Oh, you think I'm on this side? Nah, I'm going to go the other side and I'm going to pass you on the corner. It was just entertaining to see him just do that over and over again.
Whew. Last major thing we want to mention in the race. My brother and I were watching it on that couch that he's sitting on right now. We start cheering for Bottas. I see that smile. Tell me, how did you feel with this whole fastest lap? Don't do it. Don't do it. Why you pit me? Vibrations. Don't set the fastest lap. Purple sector. Purple sector. Valtteri, this is James. Oh no.
For a short moment, we felt that Bottas was trying to stick it to the man. Been on these one-year contracts, he's been pushed around his entire season, and especially since it seemed like he knew he was going to be going to a different team next year, why not just take it? He did. He was doing those purples, and then of course the radio was like, bro, we need you to stop with that. And I had such high respect for him at that moment. And then in the interview he said, well, I slowed down at the very end. I was like, no, Bottas, no, why?
He actually said that over the radio. He says, oh, I was only joking. And James was like, okay, good.
No.
So he got the fastest lap, but he left enough on the table so Hamilton could get it back.
If you're going to play that game, you have to finish what you start.
I really think that if he pushed it, he could have beat Hamilton on that fast lap.
Well, do you see the difference was like over a second?
My
so
opinion.
Whatever he left out on that track was pretty substantial if we think that that whole second was going to be made up by Bottas.
I think that if Verstappen gets far enough ahead, that 1 point will make a big difference, that Bottas would go ahead and go for it. But right now, he's a team player. If it's this close, he's not going to take that away from Hamilton.
Which then brings us to the major announcement. Bottas has announced a multi-year deal for Alfa Romeo. Why I'm stressing that is because he will be the number one driver because Kimi Räikkönen has retired. For the first time in a long time, is able to know going into the next season that he doesn't have to do contract negotiations halfway through, which is what Mercedes been doing. 5 years they've been doing that for Bottas. So I'm glad he finally gets a team that wants him. At the end of the day, Mercedes did not want him. He was their stopgap measure because Nico Rosberg retired. And they had a guy until they could find someone else. And that someone else is Russell. And so it's interesting because they were saying that they were going to wait till he could make his announcement, and then they would make their announcement for who would be the second seed. So they didn't want to like embarrass Bottas. But going into the summer break, they didn't even have any talks with Bottas. So it was never in their interest to have him. So then he took the initiative with his management team. Can I go to Williams or can I go to Alfa Romeo? He looked at the things and he eventually signed a deal.
We'll say that I was actually wrong last week because I definitely thought that they were going to go ahead and just re-sign Bottas. I am excited for Bottas. He will finally get to be driver one at the back of the grid, and that'll be real exciting to watch when he can't even pass Williams. So,
okay, to give some hope. Okay, to give some hope. Why do you think he picked Alfa Romeo instead of Williams, though? So here's my theory.
Probably
okay,
be driver one, maybe. Well, I don't know.
Here's my theory. Okay, Williams improving this season. Have you seen how they're getting better and better and better? But this is the last season of regulations. They're only improving because other teams stopped developing their cars. The first team to not develop their car was Haas. They said, we're no developments all season. This is why Mick Schumacher has been driving with a crooked cockpit the entire season. They're not going to spend the money to fix his car. Like, why? Because they're doing 100% of their research and development for next season. The second team to stop was Alfa Romeo. Isn't it no wonder that Alfa Romeo and Haas seem to be the back of the grid because they were the first ones to stop developing their car. And so they must have convinced Bottas, this is what our plan is for next season. Here's our benchmarks or whatever it is in our R&D, and we think we can get you to the midfield now. Not the back, but the midfield. He must have looked at Williams and said, okay, that's great and all, but is Williams going to have the same improvement that they were having this season when other teams start developing again? And so maybe the other thing could be is how would he be treated? The team principal, Vasseur, he was the team principal for SRT when Bottas won GP3. So that could be also where he felt like he was going to be in an environment that was going to be a best fit for him. And so I think it's those combinations is development and team chemistry.
Well, if Bottas can make it work in Alfa Romeo, that'd be exciting. It'd be cool to see Alfa Romeo do something. That'd be fun.
So I have a bold prediction. I predict that Bottas will be on the podium at least once next year in the Alfa Romeo.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Tell me why.
Because I think that once again, we're going to have Hamilton and Verstappen hitting head to head. And I think there's going to be a time where like Ocon or one of these mid-level drivers get on the podium and maybe even win. And I think he's a good enough driver and experienced enough and knows Hamilton and knows Verstappen that he's going to be able to take advantage of them. They mess each other up.
You bring up a good point. I'm going back to the 2016 season. At that time, Bottas was racing for Williams, and he was getting to the front of the grid. Bottas is not allowed to race Hamilton. Let's make that very clear. At Mercedes, he's not allowed to race Hamilton. When he was on a different team, that season was in Williams, he was actually dive bombing Hamilton, and he was trying to pass other people. It was interesting how when he was allowed to drive, he drove. And so like you said, I think going to Alfa Romeo where they're going to allow him to do what he wants to do and they design the car around him. But like you said, bro, maybe he's at the back of the grid again. But I'm hoping next season's regulations, after the cost cap was put in, we're going to see everyone squashed together. I think it's going to be really great next season. This now brings us to our heroes and zeros. Lead it off, Dad. Who's your hero?
Verstappen, I mean, to have all the pressure of going to his home track and all the expectations, I think he did a marvelous job. I think keeping ahead of Hamilton, getting a good start, not letting his nerves get to him, hats off to him.
Who is your hero?
I'll go with Gasly. Good qualifying, good race. Not really anything to talk about him. I don't even think they really mentioned him at all during the race, but the point is he finished well and he got some good fantasy points.
My hero is Alonso. Like I mentioned earlier, he passed people at the beginning of the race, and that was pivotal. If he had been stuck behind Ocon, I don't think he would have gotten his race result because Ocon claimed to have faster pace. So the fact that he got in front of his teammate and then he was able to manage his tires and then catch signs, I think that was a really good drive. Dad, who is your zero?
Vettel. Even though I thought he did well with that spin and stayed on the track so he didn't DNF, he still, to me, was disappointing because the week before he scored points and then this week he didn't. And I like to root for him, but it's a little hard this week.
The ballad of Vettel continues. It's either he finishes the race good or you see the side of his car at some point during the race.
Benalla.
Zbinala.
Zbinala. Bro, who's your zero?
This might be the last time Bottas is going to be my zero of the week. It was actually really depressing listening to the team radio for Bottas this entire race. Bottas, you're not racing to win. Bottas, let Hamilton pass. Bottas, please do not get the fastest lap. Bottas, why do you not just sign with Alfa Romeo so you can finally be somewhere else? It's so bad. And I know we've already talked about the whole fastest lap situation, so I'm not going to go into that again. I feel like this has been a long time coming. It's finally culminating. He's just going to have to finish up with the same mess that he gets week to week for the rest of the season. You know, I like the guy. I hope he does okay.
That brings me to my zeros, Williams. They had 2 weeks in a row, double point finish. That's amazing. They come in this race weekend, it looks like they're going to do it again. And for those of you who aren't aware, one of the big weaknesses about Williams is the car's really fast in a straight, but because of its aerodynamic package, crosswinds will spin the car. That happened during qualifying. Both drivers lost the rear and brought out red flags. The race was meh. Nothing happened. So they're the zeros.
Oh no, something definitely happened. He got me 0 points is what happened on my fantasy.
Yeah, normally you have green, then you have red if they're negative, and I saw black numbers for the first time. It was just a fat 0 for Russell.
Better than negatives, but, you know, green is nice too.
Yeah, I picked him up on my team instead of Mick Schumacher, and he got me 0 points.
This now brings us to our It's in the Numbers.
Last week, we did a riddle with the numbers 6-1 and 4-9 covering 2 races. I'm not 100% sure if we stumped you guys or if you guys fell asleep by that time in the video. The answer to the riddle was Latifi and Russell. Those numbers are the amount of championship points they got in those races. So you'll see Latifi got 6-1 and Russell got 4-9. So we're going to try a new puzzle this week. We got 3 sets of numbers. First number is a 20-19.770. Second is 39-18.868. And the third is 70-19.202. This came from this last race, and it was a driver. If you think you know who that driver is and you're bold enough to post the answer in the comment section, go ahead and do so for bonus points. If you will give us an explanation as to what those numbers mean, that'd be greatly appreciated.
The first one to get it correct. Now, sometimes it's a team effort, so we'll still give shout out for all of those of you who are a part of getting that right answer. But this is one of those fun parts where we get to work your brain a little bit. This now brings us to our ORC Elite. Our one race challenge, or ORC, is an invitation that we give every single week for the race that's coming up. Now, this next race is 1 week away, and so there's only a few days to join it. The ORC Elite is, over the course of the race, or one race challenge, what is the best team that you could have gotten with $100 million or less? And for the ORC Elite, for this last race, you would have been right there at the max, 99.9 million. And being able to have Verstappen on your team, Red Bull on your team, of course, that sounds like that's great to have. Having Alonso and Gasly was a good pairing. And then who knew that Latifi would be able to squeak in there and get enough points? And of course, the main steady guy of Norris. And that is your ORC Elite. Dad, it sounded like you were surprised that Alonso was getting on there.
Yeah, I was. He hasn't been consistent enough for his price point for me, his point per million. And I was also sad that Norris, because I turboed him, I should have turboed Gasly. But, you know, hindsight's 2020.
Here is our graphic for the Dutch GP for our one race challenge. Want to give a shout out to our top spot, coming in at 247 points with only a team value of 100.9. Good on ya. Ned's Nebly 1. I believe that's how you pronounce that. For those of you who are aware, even though he had the top position in our league, he used a Mega Driver this week. And there are 2 things that we do for a one race challenge. The first is we do the base score. We don't take a Mega Driver points. And the second one is if 2 teams have the exact same amount of points, then the lowest team value will get preferential status for the podium. So that means then that our top step for the podium would be, look, Ma, no Lando. Dad, you found that quite funny. Tell me.
Yeah, Lando did not do quite as well because qualifying, he didn't make it into the top 10. He did a good job catching some of those places up, but he wasn't the right one to turbo. So that kind of was predictive how he named his team.
Yeah, and that was great. And then being able to have the foresight to turbo Alonso, who seemed like a good choice. Of course, Gasly could have got a couple more points. But why this is special is because the ORC Elite was scoring 205 points, and Keskor was able to score 206 points. He was able to beat the ORC Elite. Congratulations to you that you were able to outscore the ORC Elite.
What country are we hearing the anthem for this time?
Germany. First time, I believe, this season.
Yeah, Kessler was here, did a great job. He was able to afford Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly, Alonso, Schumacher, and Red Bull. To be able to afford a lineup like that, he would have had to have more than probably 108 million. And so he really picked the right people to put on that team with the amount of money that he had. So congratulations.
You jelly?
Yeah, I couldn't afford that line up yet. Me not doing day trading at the beginning of the year has caught up with me.
And the reason why he sounds a little sad is because we'll kick over our Google spreadsheet. I have under ORC or ORC, that tab shows our one race challenge, our ORC leaderboard. And as you can see, this last race, race 13, the ORC Elite got 205 points. Keskor was able to get 206 points. But if you look at Gia, who was in second place with 201 points, he had a team value of 111.3 million. And Floris, first time on the podium from the Netherlands at the Dutch Grand Prix. Congratulations. He had 108.3 million. So you can see that some of these teams are really high up there in team value. But on the right, if you scroll all the way, you will see the averages to get these positions. To get a bronze in our one race challenge, your average points need to be 196 or more with a team value that is about 103.1. For 2 million more, you will gain roughly 6 more points, 202 points. Oddly enough, gold does not have to be as expensive as silver, and you're gaining roughly 12 points. But these are averages, right? Over the course of the season, you're going to get more and more expensive teams, and these averages will probably raise up. But this goes to show why we include the ORC Elite, because with a team with 100 million or less, to be able to outscore gold position by 30 points on average per race goes to show that craziness of sports, but you can still have a winning combination if you're willing to go outside the box sometimes. Now, if we scroll all the way to the left, we will see our leaderboard. Dad has been on the top of the leaderboard with 73 points for the entire season until this week. The last time he was on the podium was round 7, so it's been quite a while. That's why Dad feels a little sad, but congrats to Gia, who has the same amount of podium positions. It's just 2 were silver, whereas Dad had 2 as bronze. Another shout out is Keskor, who got our gold. He had only 1 bronze before, and now he's jumped into the top 10. There is still a lot of things to play for.
I think it's pretty exciting that the top 3 are all within 6 points of each other, and that the top 10, there's no repeats in the same country that they're representing. So it shows that this is an international sport, and we're just really enjoying competing against each other.
Wow. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point, Dad. Actually, let's go down this. This is fun, okay? We've got a bunch of positions that are tied at 40 points. So let's start with James P. UK stands for?
United Kingdom.
Great.
Kindergarten.
CAN stands for?
Canada.
Canada. Oh, Canada. ZAF, perhaps the hardest one on here. What does ZAF stand for?
Republic of Africa.
It's South Africa.
Why is it ZAF?
At the beginning of the DNS in the United States, computer scientists chose to adhere to all international standards and therefore allocated ZA to South Africa because ZA was the country code already listed for South Africa. Zuid-Afrika is Dutch for South Africa. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly, all those Dutch people out there. Right? So that's why it's ZAF. Okay, GER.
I'm like Germany.
Yep. IND.
India.
Yep. DEN.
Denmark.
CHN.
Well, that's easy.
Czech. Who is
China,
it?
dude?
Oh.
China, yep. SGP.
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 SGP. Singapore, isn't it?
Yep. Of course, the United States is USA. And then ITA.
Italy.
Italy. So, For all of you that are really into representing your country, my goal by the end of the season is not just to have a ORC leaderboard for our drivers, but also to have a stat showing the countries and how they were represented. So that'll be an exciting thing at the end of the season. Our Meme Team Award for this race is, in 5th position, COVID-19. It was a little sad that Raikkonen got COVID, but that is hilarious team name. So you get our Meme Team Award. If they're going to follow the 2-week policy, Raikkonen may not be able to race at Monza this coming week, which means Kubica will be subbing in for him again.
Time for Kubica to rise up.
How did he do this last race? Did he get any points for Raikkonen?
Did what I would expect a Alfa Romeo to do, which is not do anything.
Yeah, he didn't do as well. I feel sorry actually for Gio. I think Gio could have been one of the great losers of this last race. He qualified 7th and then dropped really far.
Well, I didn't have him on my team, so I didn't really care.
Yeah, true. I appreciate each of you that is a part of our one race challenge, but also of our season-long league. 231 of you. And this last race, we got on the top 5 for average points by large league. We got 165.42 points. KGP, F1 Fantasy Trackers, and the Pitwall. We have, over the course of the whole season, have been in the top 5. And so it's great for you guys to be a part of it. The Pitwall focuses so much more on one race challenges than we do in the season-long league. But many of you brought us to our attention, hey, we're doing pretty good. Pitwall League is designed for people to learn and to compare their team with other teams to see how people are making and managing their teams. And so I'm glad as a community we're feeling like we're able to improve and help each other out. We do want to promote to you our one race challenge for this next race. I need at least 10 entrants before I can make custom graphics. I always like making that. Remember that this coming race is just this coming Sunday, so you have a very small window to join our league, and that could give you an opportunity to get on our ORC leaderboard. Since we're about to talk about our Fantasy Formula 1 lineups going up into next race weekend, recognize that this coming race, the sprint race qualifying. I'll put the link in the description below. I have a special how-to video that I made for the Silverstone Grand Prix when they had their sprint race qualifying, and that'll give you a great introduction into how sprint race qualifying works and how it impacts your Fantasy Formula 1 team. You can get up to 16 additional points for one of your drivers during the sprint race qualifying on top of what you would normally get for quali and the race. And so you would want to consider potentially of using a mega driver next race, because I could give you a 3 times 16 if it's for Verstappen or Hamilton or one of those top drivers. I wouldn't recommend anyone beyond those two. The Mega Driver is a great option moving into this next race. Dominic or Dad, do either of you think about using your Mega Driver for next race?
It's a tough question because of the fact that there's potentially another one coming up, and neither Verstappen or Hamilton, in my case, Verstappen, doesn't have a quality streak or a race streak to really benefit from. Since the other one is potentially going to be in Brazil, and I don't know if they're going to actually do that one, I'm probably going to go ahead and do a Mega Driver.
Now let's review our lineups for this coming race. Since we already mentioned that Bro isn't super into his team, partly because he wasn't able to have the advantage of day trading, but show us what your lineup is and who you're thinking about either trading in or keeping on for next race.
Only difference between this week and last week is that now I've got Alonso instead of Sainz. You look at that bar, it's really high in green. Means that he might be getting me some extra cash for a different trade later down the line. We'll see what I'm able to do with that. I'm trying to catch up on the whole day trading thing. Better late than never, right?
Dad, for your lineup, you had a lot of Ferrari. Didn't think you were going to keep it for going into this race, but it seems like you kept Sainz. But you dropped Leclerc and Ferrari. Did you feel like you regretted that option, or is people you're going to potentially pick up going into Monza?
I have mixed emotions because the Ferrari seems to be a faster engine. Alonso did pass Sainz, so Alonso might be a better option than Sainz. Norris just had an off day, and even though I turboed him last time, so I have to decide, do I trust the Gasly? Is he consistent enough to have 2 races in a row and turbo him instead of Norris? I'll probably stick with Norris. I think he's going to come back.
I think we need to look at how does the practice sessions, because I probably will think about Gasly as well, because he slipped under the radar. But remember, he won last year at Monza, and he has the Red Bull Honda engine. So if he outqualifies the Ferraris again, can Norris outqualify Gasly? If the Mercedes engine in the McLaren isn't able to outqualify, then is is he going to be able to catch him? So if it looks like Verstappen has a huge advantage over Hamilton because of their engines, then maybe the same will be said for Gasly versus Norris. I think Norris, just like you said, he had an off week, but normally he's able to put it together in qualifying really good. That'll actually kick over to my lineup. This is the very first time in quite a while in which Team 2, my day trading team, actually outperformed my steady team. And it was partly because of Alonso. Alonso got a lot more points than Ocon, and Schumacher got a lot more points than Russell. And so that's where that advantage was to be had. I think, like you said, we need to watch to see how do the Ferraris show up at Monza, and then how does Gasly and Alonso. The Alpines are looking really quick as of late. They've got good straight line speed. They might be able to catch the Ferraris, whereas the Ferraris may not be able to catch them back.
The other thing I have to consider, though, since you mentioned Alonso, is with the race streak that Ocon is getting, is Alonso going to get 10 more points to make the difference?
That is very good. That's another thing. I don't think Ferrari getting 10 extra points is going to beat Red Bull, but Ocon, if you're trying to consider him compared to one of these other midfield drivers, yeah, Ocon might be someone worth picking up. And there we have it. Thank you for listening to this amazing podcast and being along for us. It's great to have this family time, this podcast time, and many of you tune in and ask all your questions about lineups and who you're thinking about, and I enjoy that dialogue. Thanks, bro, for joining us this evening. And thanks, Dad, for joining us. We've been your knights in racing armor, and until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall.